and Gabriel, who stand in the presence of God. As I come to you this morning, I bear with me a flame of cosmic purity, which in all of its radiance and perfection sweeps not only through those of you here presently assembled, but to all the blessed individuals upon the planetary body who are both with child and those who are nourishing a cosmic conception to bring greater freedom to mankind. O precious ones of the octaves of earth, so long have mankind nourished imperfect concepts that they today in this present hour do not realize the transcendence of the cosmic light as its great purity pours forth to hold all of the universes in interstellar space in their perfect orbits, and in the very dictum of the divine idea, where God's will is nursed and cherished and loved. Precious ones, you have in your hearts for many a year cherished the idea of finding your freedom, but have not always known what it would be like to obtain it. Let me tell you, blessed ones, that all of the experiences which you have passed through upon this earth are but a heartbeat in the great celestial realms of time. I refer to them as time because this enables you, blessed ones, to assimilate and to think in infinite terms. Precious ones of the light, all that which has happened to your precious life streams since first you drew forth the sacred flame and were embodied for the first occasion upon this planetary body is but a moment in the eyes of God. For his immaculate concept of you has never waned, and what is more, it never will. The same love which flowed forth through the hill country and over the land of Judea and set the hearts of the people aflame with love sweeps across the earth today with renewed passion to draw men to a realization in the midst of all human dissonance and decay of the mighty virtue that is resident within the cosmic heart of God, which cannot be violated or set aside, which cannot under any condition be chastised or brought to naught. Mankind, in their manifestation of imperfection, have but intensified an action of pain in their own world, which has not brought them the comfort which the great law requires. Precious ones, some of you are familiar with the artistry of a certain gentleman who drew forth and painted for many to enjoy the painting of the guardian angel. Well, let me call your attention to that precious painting this day, which portrays two children upon a bridge as though they would fall into a great abyss, and shows the enfolding radiance of the angelic hosts surging around those precious children and guarding them throughout their life. Let me tell you, precious ones, that it is not only in the moments of seeming danger that the angelic hosts stand guard, but it is in those moments of danger which are not realized by individuals, when the psychic and vicious forces upon this planet as a maelstrom of hate are turned loose to saturate the consciousness of mankind in accordance with the plans and intents of the hordes of shadow, who would, if they could, draw all into a vacuum of nothingness to defeat the plans of God. But they shall not pass, for the guardian angel presences of life shall ultimately attain their victory. Some of you are familiar with the creation of Fantasia, and you realize that in the closing scenes thereof, with the tolling of the great bell, the victory of the planetary body and all elemental life upon it is manifested. Well, let me tell you, precious ones, that when the plan of God has come to full fruition upon this planetary body, there will be no heart in pain anywhere upon earth. And this includes not only those tangibly and visibly manifest in a form of flesh, but those who have left the physical body and remain in the so-called astral realms, for these shall be cut free, one and all. It also includes elemental life, who have for so long served mankind and served their every need with the utmost diligence of life, and yet have received in many cases scarcely one iota of gratitude for all of their services. Precious ones, I am certain that you realize that if you were all today endowed in your present social structure with $1 million, so that no one of you would be compelled to work, that the various tasks which to the present day are performed by mankind serving the needs of men could not then be accomplished unless you were willing to take your turns in doing the necessary and seemingly menial tasks. Well, precious ones, I call to your blessed attention that the very atoms of your physical body and the very neurons of your mind, so to speak, are precious substance that was originally released from the great light of God, because God is the Father of all, loving every atom of his own being, which he has thus bestowed as electrons flowing forth. It is naturally the divine intent to raise every one of these precious electrons, atoms, and molecules into the fullness of their radiant divine intent, and to set them free from the imposition of human discord, which has for too long been imposed upon them. Because this is the divine intent, and because man desires to have a physical form through which to manifest, you can see that there is an opposition here then, for the very physical form which you manifest is composed of imprisoned substance which serves your every need. Blessed ones, do you see then how that in the radiant plan of God it is necessary for there to be a progressive expansion from the cosmic origin of things back to the very radiant heart of God, so that the praleyas may manifest, so that it may come to pass that in the manvantaras we may send forth the cosmic flame to expand and breathe out the universe in accordance with the ancient Vedas, and then, after the grand exhalation has been accomplished, to draw all that which has been created into that cosmic period of nirvanic rest, that a more noble and grand breathing forth may occur as the expanding universe moveth forth in accordance with the holy will of God. I am an archangel who serves the very needs of mankind. When long ago in the land of Judea I came forth and spake unto Mary, saying, That holy thing which shall be born of thee is the Son of God. It was the fulfillment of the cosmic flame that breathed forth in God's name to accomplish the word that was sent forth, not to go forth in void, but to go forth in accordance with the cosmic purpose, that the very light of God might be magnified, and that mankind might recognize that the power of light over darkness and shadow was at an end through the manifestation of the Christ presence. Beloved ones, know then that in your own beings there is a Christ presence. Some of you have called this presence the higher mental body. Some of you have recognized it as an angel, but it is indeed the manifestation of your own divine mediator, the Christ of your being, which is the light that came forth from the hand of God. And this light which came forth from the hand of God is the very light that has had command over your body elementals and over your beings to see that the perfect form and God design was so wondrously wrought that God himself might be glorified in it. When therefore there is any form of sickness or any form of limitation manifesting within your being, this is indeed the oppositional forces to the very manifestation of the cosmic light. For, beloved ones, in order for the atoms and electrons of your body to be free, it is necessary for you individually to have your own freedom and obtain it. Do you see? When therefore you make your ascension into the glory of God, you free all of the atoms of the flesh in your being, and all of them are able to return to the great central sun for repolarization. Blessed ones, realize that when these beauteous little miniature sons of light return, that it is a ceremonial happening, for God welcomes each one of them back to the great central sun. But you remain in your body of wondrous light substance, the very breathing essence of the sacred fire. It is, blessed ones, as these flames, for you have been sent forth as these flames are. You are therefore a living flame, and you are not a physical body composed of tarry substance, the clogging up of the body of the universe with discord and hate and anger and viciousness. You are a manifestation of the pure radiance of God. That is the unfed flame of all life. Let this flame then come forth. Let this flame then, the resurrection flame of your being, spring forth from the very altars of your being until God is glorified in that wondrous feeling. Oh, precious ones, I am so aware of the very painful feeling that comes to mankind as they enter into the God consciousness of their being and are yet anchored to the flesh, and they sense the oppression and the weight of their physical form. They long to rush forth out of the realm of human density and to escape human needs of eating and drinking and all of that attendant but necessary factors concerning man's mortal identity. They long to rush forth into the immortality of their being and yet remain bound. I say, there is one method whereby you may have release and still remain here to render your cosmic service, and that is to recognize your own cosmic conception, to recognize your own flaming God identity, and to give the full power of your being to that identity, that I am, which you are indeed and ought to always manifest, that the resurrection flame may become in you the resurgence of your own Christ and God magnificence, the perfection of God that makes you not a mortal subject to limitation and discord and distress and pain and anguish and all of the struggle, blessed ones, which your souls have for so long sensed, but that you may forsake it all, even as one holding pitifully on to the treasures and baubles of life is able to open his hands and say, I am letting go of all mortality, and I am offering my hands to the great cosmic light and the resurrection flame that is the Christed and anointed crown of my identity, that makes of me immortal substance returning to the heart of God, the God of very gods, the God of the whole earth, the substance of substance, the essence of essence, and the being of being, that is the Christ radiance. Precious and beloved ones, do you know that as I came to you this morning, that I am accompanied by myriad angels In fact, as I descended into this city of Washington, I was accompanied by 10,000 angels of the resurrection flame. But the most significant accomplishment is this, that as we have breathed out upon you the resurrection flame this morning, we have been joined by 90,000 more angels of the resurrection flame, making a total of 100,000 angels of the resurrection flame pulsating in the ethers above this city to make of it an alabaster city of light, that the presence of God might take its dominion over the earth and assert the power and glory of God in this very government that would at times, through the very narrowness of man's concept, seek to deprive the American people and the people of the world of the victory of their own being and the manifestation of constitutional government in accordance with St. Germain's own dictum of freedom. Precious ones, as I speak to you, I am reminded of a certain motion picture that was created many years ago bearing my name. It was entitled Gabriel Over the White House. Well, I am not only over the White House, but I am over the entire city of Washington this day to breathe forth the resurrection flame in commemoration of the coming of this wonderful, significant season when the great white brotherhood may pour forth through the floral kingdom and the angelic kingdom out into the kingdom of men's hearts the glorious radiance of the living Christ that shall transmute all densified substance and enable mankind to obtain for themselves a greater understanding of the radiance of God that is resident within their hearts, which we so long to intensify, which we so long desire, blessed ones, to glorify, for we would cut you free, snapping then the bonds that tie you and tether you to your own earthly forms and the density thereof, and initiating you into the grandeur of your spiritual being, which will make you the breathing, immortal presence of the living Christ. And this will be the greatest honor and allegiance you can ever pay to beloved Jesus and his Holy Mother, is to permit, I say permit, that flame to take its dominion within your world and say to that human creation, stand aside. You have no power over me. I am a deathless being. I am the presence of life, and I shall for all time, forever, maintain the manifestation of that presence in his holy name. Drink in now, resurrection flame. Let your forms be saturated with it. Retain in consciousness its power. You can, if you will, be catalysts of that flame wherever you go. You can be our emissaries, the emissaries of the celestial hosts. But it must be an offering of your own free will presence. God has given to you the free will to do, to know, to keep silent in adoration, and to vivify the manifestation of the divine image, the celestial concept which I am. Salutem Christem resurgem, O holy light of the sacred temple, come forth from the cave of materiality and manifest upon the screen of life as the victorious risen Christ. Let all palms wave in hosannas to God on high, who hath given the earth her victory. I thank you, and in the light of the eternal morning, I bid you good morning, good afternoon, and good day.
All things come home at eventide, like birds that weary of their roaming, and I would hasten to thy side, homing. O dearest, I have wandered far, from daybreak to the twilight gloaming. I come back with the evening star, homing. Thou art my hunger and my need, the goal and solace of my roaming. Be thou my haven when I speed, homing. All things come home at eventide, like birds that weary of their roaming, and I would hasten to thy side,
O thou enfolding radiance of white fire substance, thou immortal essence of purity, Holy Spirit, amplify thy pulsations and place thy hand upon thy children, upon the entire planetary body, that all may come into consonance with God's holy will. Let all the earth then hear this my declaration. My loyalty for El Moria and Saint Germain is a loyalty that is ageless, for we work in one supreme sense of unity under the direction of the cosmic hierarchy and as a manifestation of light to the planetary body. The fullness of that light, I remind you, is resident within the temple of your own being, for it has been said, ye are the temple of God, and your bodies are holy. This then is truth, and is a manifestation of truth. Those who would pervert the purposes of either the body or the mind are themselves sons of inequity, fiercely determined to rebel against the spirit of purity and holiness. They have their reward. But we also shall pray for them and shall continue to do so, for it is the will of God that every son born of his flame and created at inner levels in the immaculate concept of God ought to so manifest his purity and perfection as to remain anchored and positioned within the plan unfolding for all life. There is a wonderful pattern, precious ones, and there is a place prepared for you upon that cosmic pattern. Have you thought about that? Have you stopped to realize that this place is your own? that it was prepared for you of the Father in heaven, and that it is your own mighty I Am presence that shall prove to be the directing intelligence that shall draw you to a place where awareness of that plan shall come into your mind and consciousness daily, assisting you in the externalization of those patterns which are made by divine decree. I am well aware of the factors governing life upon this planet, of the mass confusion and disorder which is in evidence here. I am well aware of how the sincere of heart are pulled, as it were, with their emotions moving first in one direction and then in another. But I would point to you that there is a great pole star of your being, which is your own divine presence. Be not therefore, as El Morya has told you, affrighted or dismayed by outer appearances. It has been foretold that there should come in the latter times those who would attempt to deceive mankind, and those who would also be deceived. Know then that by steadfastness to the pinions of the Holy Spirit you shall rise, whereas if you tie yourself to the opinions of men, you are apt to be in jeopardy. I call to your attention the great unity of heaven and the angelic host, how that there is manifest in heaven one desire to serve the never-failing light of God and to bring glory to the cosmic purpose. Many individuals today, distressed by outer appearances, from time to time vacillate in their mind and being, and do not hold a complete feeling of God harmony within their being. I do not come today to chastise you concerning this, but to call to your attention that it is necessary for you to shake the dust of human ideas from your consciousness, much in the manner which a person will shake a rug, and to be determined then not to inhale the dust which pours forth. I would like to call to your attention that when you have laid down any outer condition which distresses you, you ought not to pick it up again. This admonishment has appeared in scriptural references in the Bible, which is used in Western civilization particularly. And therefore I would call to your attention this day that all that has been written both in West and East concerning admonishments of laying off the carnal man is essential in the manifestation of the Christ man. I am certain that here in this audience there are a number of candidates for the ascension whose hearts and minds have told them, when observing the world and all that is in the world, that there is no greater joy possible to man than to ascend out of imperfection. But I am equally certain that the full meaning of the ascension in the light is not realized by scarcely any. For it is indeed difficult for mankind, caught in the effluvia of the mass consciousness, to be able to understand the blessed feeling that comes to mankind when at last he has shaken off the dust of imperfection from his feet, when his body begins to express the complete and full purity of God, when the Holy Spirit passes through his consciousness and world without the impediments which formerly have existed there, holding back the full glory of that presence. I would call to your attention then that the very center of your being, the solar plexus, the radiating center of the sun presence of life, ought never to be eclipsed by human violence and emotions. Mankind so frequently bring about distress to one another, whereby there is a distortion of the presence of peace within them, and they feel as though a buzzsaw or a wheel turning in mud were situated around their solar plexus, and there is a great disquieting energy which pours through that blessed place of light. Now, this is certainly not the fulfillment of the divine plan, and it is necessary then that you establish harmony within your feeling world. If this is to occur, or ever does occur, as a result of your contact with some individual, you ought to call to the God presence of that individual and to their Holy Christ self for the establishment of the flame of cosmic peace and harmony between your life streams, so that there is then no longer any eclipse occurring in your own consciousness. But you ought also to recognize the responsibility of each individual who makes a call for the establishment of harmony in their own world to also confer the blessing and sign of forgiveness to the one who has offended them or who has directed the discordant energy at them. I call this to your attention because it is cosmic law. I direct it to you today that you may have the double portion of blessing which is extended to mankind by reason of the power of forgiveness. The Holy Spirit is never at any time interested in entering into a state of discord or impurity or imperfection. The Holy Spirit is the victory of the light. It is the presence of immortal God upon the throne of each individual identity. And when that Spirit and presence does direct to mankind His holy will, and that will can find lodging in the receptive consciousness, that one becomes a candidate for the manifestation of Christ's victory. Until individuals, blessed ones, are able to recognize that that which we are offering you is so much better than anyone can offer you anywhere else in the world, they are not able to turn the full pressure of their attention upon their God presence. For as long as there is any question in your mind, or doubt, or fear, or confusion, this doubt and fear and confusion, belonging to the empire of the negative, will stand as a screen of Maya between the manifestation of your victory. Therefore, the proper method for all to use is to call unto their own divine presence and say, Beloved, mighty God presence, thou I am in me. And our Lord the Mahachohan removed from my consciousness all wedges of dark substance, all untransmuted opinions concerning others, all doubt concerning the manifestation of the great law of harmony and the justice of God, and produce in my world your purity and wholeness, which recognizes the justice of God, which recognizes the purity of God, and which recognizes my own divine plan now fulfilled. Do you see, blessed ones, that by relating this tremendous idea of perfection to your own selves, it acts to curb your human propensities and causes you to recognize yourself not as a mortal indulging in a series of human episodes, but as a manifestation of the greatness of the light of God. This light then can flow through you and assert its dominion where human weakness appears, and there is then no need to submit to the pressures of discouragement or doubt concerning your ability to attain, for you will have the immediate and direct assistance of your own God presence flowing forth through you and taking its indomitable power and victory in your world. This then is the manifestation of a Son of God and is the direct intent of heaven for every life stream. For there is no one, and I call this to the attention of all, in this place or any place upon the planetary body that has not been created by God for the express purpose of coming to victory and obtaining and receiving the fullness thereof. Therefore, when individuals are inclined to depreciate themselves and consider their own failures or shortcomings, let them recognize that we do not recognize these shortcomings or imperfections. We do not see these qualities acting in man. We see only the fullness of God acting in man. It is true, blessed ones, that there is the discriminating intelligence of the Holy Christ self acting as a mediator between man and God, which has been charged with the responsibility of recognizing how to amend human imperfections. We do not deny that in man's state of becoming there does manifest qualities far less than the light. We affirm, however, the power of the light, and we deny the power of shadow to take dominion in your world. This, then, is necessary to your understanding, and this is why I am this day bringing forth these words, that you may no longer let your faith abide in the power of negation or the power of darkness. For many of the students, without realizing it, have actually pinned their faith to the negative. They have actually said to themselves, I will make this decree, but somehow or other I just don't think it is going to work, because this particular quality of negation is exceptionally powerful. Oh yes, blessed ones, this is true. Students have recognized imperfection in the appearance of ill health in their world, and they have consulted a physician and have been told this condition is very dangerous. And because some man told them that the condition was dangerous, and because they accepted it as dangerous, they have not been able to manifest the fullness of healing in their own world. If they would recognize God's power as supreme, and recognize that God does not affirm any power related to negation, but only affirms the power related to himself, they would realize that it is they who must cast aside and deny the power of all that is less than light until they are radiating centers of divinity, able then to take their place in the body of world servers who are devoted to the purity of the divine plan and the manifestation of divine intelligence and Christ's purity always. Blessed ones, as you gaze upon the world today, you must realize that it is of great benefit if you will hold the immaculate concept for the world in its present hours of dilemma. When mass confusion goeth forth and the world feels very distraught and somehow disconnected from God, it does not help to have powerful minds who are minds of prayer, also accepting the imperfection of the world and affirming it. If you will then realize the power of the Holy Spirit to act through you and to hold beautiful thoughts and concepts for the world, you will realize that there is a possibility of what I shall term today a silent service to the light, which can render unlimited blessing to the planetary body. This silent service is indeed engaged in by some of you. It is my hope that it will be used by all of you for the blessing of the planet and the amplification of the power of the Holy Spirit to cleanse, to purify, and to direct the consciousness of mankind into the promised land of its own purity and perfection. O blessed ones, the kingdom of God is so much more than words. When you read a travel folder telling you of the wonders of foreign lands and describing beautiful places to which you may go, please recognize
that the higher realms of light and octaves of perfection are so far beyond these places in their descriptive outpicturings that there has been to the present hour no accurate description written or conveyed to mankind that will do justice to the beauty and wonders of the higher octaves. Oh, I know, blessed ones, that there are moments of doubt when mankind, feeling the pressures that are centered around his own divinity, that hides the light of that divinity from manifesting, do feel very, very much as though God was actually not taking any part in their affairs. But, blessed ones, this is not true. There is no power in that condition. There is no power in that statement. For God always and forever shall turn his attention upon those who will turn their attention upon him. Blessed ones, you must recognize that the call compels the answer. And if you will continue then to make the call, fulfillment is merely a question of time until there has seeped into your entire divinity a saturation of the pressure of divine fulfillment, whereby the quantity of the great divine quality is so completely within your very bones and the substance of your being that the brightness of the Christ appears therein, and you are chalices of his perfect image. In this sense, by the power of the Holy Spirit, I now seal you in the radiance of that pressure and identity, identifying you with the completeness of its power to sustain in you all that is virtue and to pour through you the radiance of his light. I am the fulfillment of that plan this day, manifesting it in your midst and throughout the planetary body, to bless elemental life and to fulfill and sustain certain requests and fiats which have been made to me by beings both ascended and unascended, until there shall manifest in time to come a certain word which shall go forth as the word of new freedom to the earth, to the elementals, and to mankind, in the triune sense of immortal freedom of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. I salute you and bid you good afternoon.
the love of God forth in its mighty tide of purity. It envelops and compasses mankind's consciousness and being with an infinite and measureless beat. It sustains the power of the soul, the radiance of the light of life, which is behind the outer screen. And this is our love flowing forth with limitless radiance. O precious one, in the simple sweetness of natural manifestation, the love of God flows between hearts and hearts, between planetary bodies and the sun, and between world systems, world without end. The mighty release of wisdom's flame is balanced by the flame of cosmic power, and understanding fills the earth with compassion for one another. For it ought to be that as men expand their light in the mighty consciousness of God, they should enter into greater understanding of one another, and should feel the all-embracing radiance that has given them consciousness and being. There are many pilgrims who at spiritual levels come to me in the mountain temple which bears my name, and although I frequently sit here saying no words, but radiating my peace and my love, the question of their benefits do not go unrecognized by me or by the great cosmic host, and therefore they return again and again. I am aware, even at the heights of our attainment, that it is not I who do the work, but it is the infinite omnipresence of God which is within them, the seed of vital faith which cannot entertain doubt, but in its own fullness of knowing looms full-orbed, the mighty substance to perform the seeming miracle of God manifestation, whereby upon the screen of life there is outpictured a master presence where formerly stood a mere mortal form, and the great expansion which occurs with the inflow of the Christ radiance is beyond human comprehension. This is that infinite tide of light which, infusing man, alters his appearance from within, and will eventuate in an alteration of his outward appearance, so that as Moses presented to the children of Israel the face of God's radiance, so the beauty of cosmic wholeness and purity shall ultimately be revealed in the face of the true disciple. And yet I call to your attention that behind the veil of flesh, even those who seem to be far less than they are, is the supernal radiance not always tangibly evident to the outer senses, for Iscariot was needed to point out the radiant Christ and betray him, for they could not outwardly perceive the love light that flowed forth from him and encompassed the world round about. To the present hour, those steeped in the densities of human ignorance and recognize only the outer appearance, there is not the transcendent power of divine love evidenced, for they do not realize in their outer mind and being the fullness of that which occurs from within. Now, may I draw very close to you this morning, not by the mere power of words, but by the power of spiritual wholeness. May I saturate you with love. May I saturate you with a love that is not for the changing world, but is for the changeless manifestation of God's compassion for his creation. O precious ones, though high-sounding phrases might be uttered, and on occasions they are, there is no more wondrous power than the power of love. When a child in an era of destructivity is torn from his mother's arms, the child will sob as though his heart would break. The child will exhibit evidences of terror. The child is in fear. And this is because of the absence of the mother's love established in rapport through that physical contact with the child. Restore that one to the arms of the mother, and the sobbing will begin to abate, and the child will fall into a state of gentle sleep with complete comfort and trust. This is the power of a mother's love. What think ye then is the result when mankind shall turn themselves over to the love of God and be filled with that love, absorbing the essence of that love, and knowing the message that is conveyed through the simple radiation of love? I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that the world can be changed by this power, for it has been written that the meek shall inherit the earth. And yet, in the warped concepts that men have held far too long, they assume that the world is conquered by power, by physical power and by the force of violence, by the riptides of human confusion, and by the manipulations of the Machiavellian politicians who desire to manipulate mankind as puppets, but without real purpose. Power of divine love has been proven to the world even in your day. For in the land of India, that Mahatma, known to many as Gandhi, who forfeit his life in due course of time, did exhibit upon the world stage as the Christ of old the power of non-violence, and did free from the lion's paw the nation of India. This is the historical event of recent time made manifest in order to shew forth the power of love, and still the river flows, and many, as wandering children upon the banks of the Ganges, observe the flow of the stream and see the tide of light, but they have eyes and see not, they have ears and they hear not, they have hearts and they do not comprehend. This development must come. All have not attained it. All cannot open their being to the power of love, and it is a great tragedy for themselves. I call to your mind then the episodes of old in Egypt, when the hardness of Pharaoh kept in bondage the Egyptian people, as well as the children of Israel. But I call to your attention that the hardness of the Egyptian rulers lashed out in the main against the children of the alien nation of Israel, and proceeded to inflict upon them much grossness and much punishment. Yet it came to pass that by the power of infinite love, the children of God escaped from the land of Egypt and the house of bondage, and crossing the wilderness, ultimately obtained the promised land. I call to your attention that human bondage to the power of the senses shall be broken. I call to your attention that all must bring forth from their own heart the power that shatters bondage. For the Pharaoh was indeed a man of hardness of heart, and the power of love had not yet penetrated into his nature. This power of love is the power which, flowing forth from the earth into a plant wedged between rocks, will smash and crack the rocks by the power of the life that flows from within the plant, tender though it may be, for our vines have tender grapes, and the avatara that have manifested upon the world scene have descended out of transcendent light and brought unto the people of the earth on countless occasions a demonstration of the radiance of the eternal home. To the present hour, those who have eyes and see not are yet blind, those without ears do not yet hear. But this does not affect the power of love within its own sphere, for there the power of love moves swiftly to intervention where permitted, and to non-intervention where not permitted, flowing on as a river of virtue and performing the services God intended on behalf of mankind. I am aware of the depth of the study of the students of the true light throughout the world. I am aware of how that they have called for a relief from false understanding. I am aware of their search for truth. But I must call to all mankind today and say unto all, the truth lies within yourself and not in another. For although another may have truth, it is not easily conveyed by word of mouth alone, but must be conveyed as the veils are drawn apart and severed from within the consciousness of each one. For human offenses are many against the great law. And it is unfortunate, and yet not of great concern to those of us who have entered into the fullness of love's power. But we are not satisfied to ignore the sickness of the world, and the pain of the world, and the struggles of the world, and therefore each day a momentous tide of our energy flows forth with God in an attempt to assuage human suffering and misery, to create a greater climate of understanding, to help mankind feel at home and comforted in the midst of a seeming hostile consciousness. While I am speaking to you, there is a cosmic action taking place throughout the planetary body, whereby an intense power of love's radiance conveyed forth by the angelic host is rendering a very special assistance to the elementals, enabling them, and I say many of them, to cut themselves free from the weight of human oppression that has been lying heavily upon their head for a long period, enabling them then to conceive as to how they can better outpicture a multitude of blossom designs held within the heart of the Lord Mahachohan and the beloved Immaculata, the silent watcher for the earth, designs of a floral nature which, because of mankind's rudeness of heart, has been withheld upon the planetary body. It is our hope then that we may be able to infuse certain seeds with essential spiritual elements drawn forth from these loving patterns, whereby certain types of flowers will begin the action of a mutant and will change their characteristics to bring forth new types of flowers in preparation for the coming golden age. It will be necessary that mankind assist the angelic host and the elemental beings by a continuous action of transmutation. While these ideas are very tender and young, and the implantation has scarcely been received, there is always the danger of its being withdrawn and lost as the precious oil is poured upon the earth. This, in a sense, is the falling of the word upon the rock, the stony ground, where it cannot bring forth the perfect fruit of heaven, the Edenic manifestation which the great law requires. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not my desire to weary you. There are perhaps important things that you wish to do, and therefore I shall take my leave of you and hope that in your own heart and the understanding of that heart you will realize that we are very sensitive beings, devoted only to expanding the light of those whose hearts are wholly in attune with the divine will. Where the door is held wide open, we can come in and sup and abide. Where there is doubt or questioning or fear or confusion, we must, by cosmic law, withhold our presence in part. For only that energy which is consciously received with joy will spring up as the fruit and flower of the Lord upon the pathways of holiness which lie ahead. I have come from the Himalayas, bearing love's tide. I have come to infuse your consciousness with a more than ordinary measure of devotion, may I hope that it shall bear the fruit God intends. My love and my blessing joins the love and blessing of the Lord the Mahachohan, and the love and blessing of your own God presence. In the fullness of that presence, may your desires materialize until they cease to be yours, and they are God's alone. Then it shall come to pass that the doorway to the kingdom and the mysteries thereof shall swing open wide, and ye shall enter in and abide without fear, without doubt, without confusion, with only peace, with only love, with only the kingdom's pattern in manifestation. I thank you and bid you good morning. The dazzling light of the immortal presence of God is within the temple of each one's being. But as it beams forth and takes its dominion and asserts its authority, it becomes the guiding light for each moment during which the Chela is conscious of the all-enfolding presence of immortality. I am come this day in order to infuse you with greater understanding concerning your immortal nature and the perfection of God which is resident within you. Precious ones of the light, let me then briefly comment upon the body of the Christ, known to you as Jesus. I would point out to you that the powers of darkness, in their attempts to conceal his radiance from mankind, to conceal that which could not be concealed, sought to destroy the most efficacious part of his being. Remember, precious ones, that the very spot upon his precious head where the crown of life ought to have rested was crowned with thorns, representing then the gratitude of those who were not aware of his offering. It was a mockery of the presence of life, and yet it sufficed to dramatize for the ages to come the mighty penetration of his radiance, that all might see in that reality of the immortal Christ the presence of God, crowned not with a golden crown, but with a crown plated of the thorns which mankind must recognize are symbols of human hurt and density. Recognize also then that the penetration of his hands in the centers with the nails is significant, for within every man upon this earth, resident within the center of the palms of his hand, is a focus of the sacred fire which has never been violated. It was the desire then of the sinister powers of shadow to destroy those focuses of healing light located within the center of the palms of his hands. Bear in mind, precious ones, that there is also within your flesh a focus of light within the centers of the palms of your hands. And therefore, if you would create this day a wave offering unto God, raise your hands at about to shoulder level. Directly to the front of your body, see mighty light rays penetrating out from your hands. Let there be then, I say, an activation of that cosmic center of the sacred fire within your own hands, that you may realize that the healing power of immortality is vested in all who will recognize the power of God that abides within themselves. You then must accept today the blessing of God and let it flow through your conscious being out into the world to bless mankind in a manner as Jesus did. Let then the Spirit of holiness saturate the world today, and repeat with me, receive ye the Holy Spirit, as though ye were conferring upon all people upon earth the very breathing, essential holiness of God. Receive ye the Holy Spirit. You may place your hands back in your laps. Precious ones of the light, there are other focuses in the body of Jesus which they sought also to destroy and to blunt. These counterparts are also a part of your own physical form. And I would call to your attention then that the very fact that these precious foci of light exist within the domain of your own form is significant of God's intent to produce within you the great outpouring of the Christ radiance, a restoration to the body of the earth, to the planetary body symbolized by your physical form, of the immortal radiance of God, which is the healing perfection of the master plan for all life. As I stand in your midst this day, blazing forth the mighty blue ray of divine power, for I am the great divine director, it is my will to see that the planet becomes more aware at this coming Easter tide of the inflowing power of the cosmic Christ, that the planetary body may be bathed in the radiance of God as never before, that a cosmic initiation of intense feeling be bestowed upon the earth, making all men aware of the great precious blessing which has been bestowed upon them in the release of the life essence into their heart as the immortal flame of love, wisdom, and power, the threefold radiance of God, the unfed flame, the flame of immortality that cannot be destroyed by any, for it is the presence of life itself. It came forth from the presence of life, and it is the very essence of that presence. Accept then, precious ones, the fact that planetary need has been taken into account by the Karmic Board. For mankind, by reason of their density, each man seeking his own pleasures and portion of life, has caused a prodigal son consciousness to dominate mankind until they are no longer aware of the great God radiance that flows forth from their hearts and is the very life that they ought to deem most precious. Today, the newspapers and various media of communication of the world are filled with stories almost daily dramatizing the tremendous density within mankind which causes them to resort to crime and to various other acts against the very presence of life. These individuals ought, of course, to be pitied for their ignorance, but all men must recognize that the brunt of this is being borne by the precious elementals themselves who sustain the God action upon earth, not only within the force field of your own physical beings and your minds, but also the sustaining magnetism and the power of cohesion present and resident within the planetary body. Therefore, these precious elemental beings are giving of their life to fill the breach and gap, as it were, in the dike of mankind's own energies, which have held the energies of God in abeyance and have not permitted them to flow forth, and have also created a bank of man's unregenerate energies which attempt to flow forth to destroy the Christ image upon the planetary body and in every man. Recognize then that a man's foes shall be those of his own household. Those with whom you are surrounded today upon the planetary body, by reason of their own gross ignorance, have caused and attempted to cause mankind's feet to stumble upon the pathway that leads to immortal life. Many today stand puzzled, saying, God is in his heaven, and he has created all things, yet there is a constant manifestation of imperfection. Yes, we recognize this, but we also know its source. Its source is from within mankind, and is a result of their own misqualification of the priceless energies of cosmic purity, which have poured forth from within their heart and have been misqualified with hate and with disease and with all types of human viciousness. Much of this viciousness is old and is sinister and is encrusted hate, being born from past ages into the present and being sustained by this generation in their own ignorance. Take, for example, the current crises in Cyprus and recognize that the hatreds there are thousands of years old, going back then to a point where many of those individuals now who have these fierce tirades of hatred against one another are expressing ancestral vengeance and a thirst for blood which is completely contrary to the word that goeth forth from the Lord of the world. I tell you, beloved ones, the heart of Lord Buddha is saturated with great regret because of the intense action of mankind's hatred and viciousness. They have poured forth venom rather than pour forth the love of God, which is intended to engulf the world in this day. The great cosmic clock, which has been referred to in the past, has almost stood still, hoping that mankind would cease that action, and yet it has continued to the present hour. Nevertheless, upon this planetary body, there are many individuals whose hearts beat with hope and in anticipation of the mighty outpouring of the Golden Age radiance. Those individuals then are continually calling and asking God to shorten these days of travail, that the radiance of the Golden Ages, which enfolds the world at inner levels, may break forth and release a mighty flood tide of spiritual energy which shall wash away the silt, the mud, and the residue of the ages, which is not qualified with the precious substance of the immortal Christ consciousness. Precious ones of the light, the powers of the heaven are shaken this day. They are shaken in defiance of mankind's ignorance and in a determined effort to generate a greater sense of awareness on the part of the people of this planetary body concerning the need to externalize more of the radiance of love. The word of God goeth forth, and mankind seem not to have heard. Having ears they hear not, and having eyes they see not, and they do not recognize for any great length of time the magnificent power that has gone forth to accomplish the purposes of God. And yet it shall come to pass that the wisdom and the power and the glory of God shall fulfill the divine plan within the heart of the individual believer, so that one shall be taken and another shall be left from among mankind. And eventually they shall perceive that some are going away into a sphere of great illumination and understanding. This is being brought about and has now for some time, for centuries, been brought about in increasing numbers. I refer to the ritual of the ascension, whereby mankind are able to redeem their energies and balance the great karmic scales, finding then a release from the powers of generation and the perpetuation of the human ego. They are able to enter into a state of Christ identification and consciousness, where they identify with the Christ of God, and then are raised through spiritual elevation to identify with God himself, so that it can be said of all, the Father is in me and I am in the Father. And therefore, as this mighty tide of light flows through them, and the energies perform, as it were, a sort of corkscrew spiral rising up to the very heart of life, there is drawn off from the top of their head as smoke
all of the unregenerate energies, and a great purification occurs within their form. Eventually then, the purity becomes so great that the light energies from on high rush into the physical form, and it would be indeed most dangerous for anyone to touch their physical form at that moment, and therefore the cry would go forth, "Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended, but I ascend unto your God and unto my God." And therefore the great power then of light, intensifying its action, will raise that one into the supreme ecstasy, whereby the glory of God penetrates each pore of their consciousness, pouring forth its radiance upon the entire earth, and recognizing that there is a focus in the heart of all lesser lights, whereby they too, when the moment comes, will be raised into that supreme ecstasy experienced by the ascending one. This then was accomplished in beloved Jesus, and has been accomplished since by many others, including Cardinal Bonzano many years ago and in your era. You must recognize then that this possibility of achievement lies within the domain of each individual, whereby those who will accept the power of the ascended masters and the radiance of their own mighty I Am presence will be able, through obedience to the great heart of life, which hovers over them and is the fullness of their own divine presence, to ascend into it and to be clothed upon with the power of immortality, so that they are no longer the manifestation of a mere mundane or earthly identity, but are the manifestation of God among men. And then the cry that was repeated long ago upon Patmos becomes a living reality in this day. The tabernacle of God is with men, and he is in them, and they shall recognize him, and they shall recognize their teachers, seeing that their teachers are no longer removed into a corner, but are at hand, even at the very door of their heart, knocking and pleading for admittance. And all who will open their hearts will receive the mighty power of light's radiance flowing into their hearts, and they will commune with the Christ presence of life and be exalted into the fullness of that which God intends, which is contrary to all which has seemed to be reality to man, which is only a form of godliness, but denies the power thereof, which power must come into manifestation in each man if he is to achieve his victory individually. Beloved ones, I am the great divine director, and whether men recognize that I am here this day and speaking to you or not, the fact remains that the mighty tangible light rays from my presence are pouring forth, and those who are sensitive and able to receive will also receive a special impetus of cosmic light, whereby if they will nourish that light, they will be able from this day forward to move at a little greater pace than in the past into those dimensions of achievement which are the perfection of God poured out from day to day as the great law intends. I tell you, beloved ones, the great white brotherhood, in the person of the many ascended masters and cosmic beings, has in mind this morning the great needs of the planetary body. We are aware of the tremendous radiance of light that has been released, but we are also aware of the density of the human mind and consciousness which has prevented the full shaft of that light from penetrating as deeply as we desire. We are also aware, beloved ones, of the nefarious activity of those so-called brothers of the shadow who in their basic ignorance and desire to expand their own ego have failed to apprehend the knowledge of God which has been handed down to the archangels. Therefore, as Lucifer of old did not understand that law, but became lifted up with pride. So these have been lifted up with a false pride and have desired to expand their own being without paying allegiance to the great universal consciousness of cosmic unity, which the great law demands in order to give man the greatest of all benefits. For if any individual were to be deified or to be set apart, that would be a condition of lack, whereby that individual would be denied the blessing which God intends. Only by entering in to the consciousness of immortal oneness, only by entering in to the full God awareness of the fact that the cosmos is not one but many made one, can man fully understand that all must assist every other part of the universal consciousness until all are lifted into the fullness which the great light, by reason of its own magnanimity, must bestow upon man. It cannot be otherwise. For this is the law itself in action. It is not a human law. In the name of God, I ask you, how can mankind dare to consider that any human being would dare to speak these words to you? I am the great divine director, and I am releasing this flood tide in order to bring peace to mankind and achievement, and to reverse the tide of negative energy which has caused the assassination of your own president and has caused countless war problems to have occurred day after day upon this planet. This is the type of energy that has selfishly acted in the president of France, as it were, so that it comes to pass that even the individual who heads the French government does not recognize the need to pour his adoration to God with gratitude and understand that he must be grateful for all the assistance that has been given to his own nation as a reason of the love of the American people. Precious ones, love is not national. Love is not international. Love is interplanetary and intergalactic, and is the cosmic emanation of God from the sun behind the sun. Therefore, the statesmen of the world must come to a point where they have greater understanding to seek the good of all upon the planetary body, and they must enter a state of conscious willing to bring about peace, rather than to seek constantly to outpicture the old historical patterns which have brought so much distress to mankind for so long. As I speak to you this morning, I recognize that there is a great danger coming within the next 30 days to the world, which ought to be averted, and it is a very dark cloud indeed. But I do not desire to have the students of this activity dwell upon the negative aspects thereof, but upon the removal of the cause and core of that threat to world peace. I ask, therefore, that special decrees be given each day for the removal of any threats to world peace, and that this be offered to the heart of Lord Gautama. I would like to call to the attention of one specific member of this audience the fact that although Gautama is called the Prince of Peace, and this he is indeed, he has also militantly defended that peace by a very active release of the vital force of God peace from his own heart being. This has not been without cost, for he has even denied himself certain cosmic initiations in order to bestow upon the earth a greater radiation of his peace and a greater radiation of his love as a bulwark to reinforce the world's own energy, to keep it from the brink of war. Ladies and gentlemen, the spirit of sacrifice is ever the spirit of God. It is the spirit of giving. It is the spirit of receiving that one may give. It is the spirit of knowing that one may impart knowledge. It is the spirit of serving that one may be served, that one may serve still more. And so all is the expansion of the light of God, which never, never, never fails. May I express my gratitude to each one of you for your humble attention upon your own divine presence and for your kind attention to my words. May I ask that the radiance of the universal Christ shall enfold you now and cause to tremble within the very force field of your being the wondrous radiance of the pierced hands of the Christ, which to this day means an outpouring of light in a givingness to mankind. May I express my gratitude to each one of you for your humble attention upon your own divine presence and for your kind attention to my words. May I ask that the radiance of the universal Christ shall enfold you now and cause to tremble within the very force field of your being the wondrous radiance of the pierced hands of the Christ, which to this day means an outpouring of light in a givingness to mankind, that they may find comfort in all of their distresses and release from all of their fears and blessings of freedom in all that has bound them. I thank you, and I bid you good afternoon